Brugada syndrome is a familial disease with autosomal dominant mode with incomplete penetrance. And it's very common in male. And initially it was called the idiopathic ventricular fibrillation because this patient had no structural heart disease. But it had one thing that is a marker. It's a patient have abnormal EKG of labyrinth branch block pattern. I shouldn't say labyrinth branch block pattern with SCO elevation over the right precordial lead. Now, initially I've been showing that no structural heart disease, but now I have to strike this no structural heart disease, and I'll tell you why later on. And this is the typical type 1 Brugada ECG pattern to have a curved type in the right precordial lead. It's 1 with 2 with 3. And this majority of these patients peculiarly have ventricular fibrillation episode at night time. This is one of the patients from Thailand that have PVC occur almost around midnight and thicker ventricular fibrillation. It had to be short cupping. If it's long cupping, it may not necessarily induce VFib, and in about an hour later have another episode. This patient didn't even know that what happened. The patient was shocked in the chronic unit. The other thing that you have to know that many of these patients, because the heart muscle and the contraction is normal, when many of these ventricular fibrillation occur, doesn't mean that the patient has to die. Often, a ventricular fibrillation terminates in like a particular patient. That's why many of these patients presented with the syncope attack or near syncope. But most of the presentation of the Brugada syndrome is a sudden death or about the sudden death cardiac arrest. And often it was presenting like an unresponsiveness after labor, respiration during sleep, agonal respiration, or even seizure. In many of our patients were treated with anticonvulsive agent. We, in our group, we have the consensus twice. And this is, you see the Pedro Brugada and Joseph Brugada somewhere here, and then all of us. Miss White one is in the Netherlands, and here is leg palsy. And we came up with the EKG guideline that the curve type, this is the diagnosis of the Brugada. SC elevation have to be above 2 millimeter, and it is saddleback. It's suggestive, but it's not diagnostic. You have to use aspirin or do something like putting the EKG in the high precordial to diagnose. And this is not diagnostic of the Brugada type 3. And Dr. Pietersma from Amsterdam published a paper that showed the incident, which is relatively, it showed worldwide, but more prevalent in Asia. But this number is somewhat underdiagnosed because most of this EKG was just only in a classical fourth intercostal space. But now we know that if you put position of the EKG lead in a higher position, third and second intercostal space, you can bring the pattern of the Brugada pattern much more. And in the control group that doesn't have that, when you put, you might see just incomplete labyrinth branch block. The other thing that we can unmask the pattern is that to keep sodium channel blockade. And I show you the mechanism and so on later on. So with that, the first consensus that we come up with is to diagnose Brugada syndrome, you have to have a type 1 EKG either after sodium channel or spontaneously, documented VF, family history, and type 1 in a family member. In Thailand, the incidence of the Brugada pattern is very high, 1.8% in the second with the second intercostal space the positioning. And then this one is very important, that study from Dr. Ratanatwong, that if you check the EKG of the patient that coming to the ER during fever, the incidence of Brugada's ECG pattern is higher. And we know everybody who dealing with this disease that know that fever unmasks Brugada ECG pattern. And you can see here that the example when you have temperature, you have the curve type pattern, and then when the temperature subsides, the pattern disappears. And the other thing can cause the Brugada pattern. This is one of my patients in Denver that have the cocaine overdose, and you can see Brugada pattern. And this is a whole list of this. So you have to be very careful when you diagnose the Brugada syndrome. As I mentioned, it's a genetic disease, and the abnormal is in the protein, the SCN5A mutation. That this is the gene that decodes the sodium channel, and most of these changes in the SCN5A mutation. Now we have found it over 300 mutations, mostly missense mutation and nonsense mutation. All of this result into the reduction of sodium current going to the cell. And I'm not going to go to detail. And then now there's so many genes now that we discovered. But all this, the most important one is the SCN5A mutation. And that happened not in 100%, it's about 11 to 28%. There's a nice study by Professor Vecina that do a GWAS study and show that perhaps the Brugada genetic disorder is not monogenic disease, like for example, hemophilia. But usually when you have a multiple SNP, like in this case, they found the SCN5A, SCN10A, and the HER2. And if you have the variants, multiple combined, then you can see see the higher incidence of Brugada syndrome. Because of that, Dr. Pichai and our team, now we are planning to do in Thailand the whole genome sequencing, not just only the GWAS. And we got thank goodness funding from the Thai government, the research, and that's what we almost finished now to do the study. Now, how about the genetic testing for Brugada syndrome? If you have patients that have Brugada, the proband that have Brugada CG pattern and symptom, then you should do first simple SCN5A mutation screening. If the proband tests positive, then you can do in the family. If the proband tests negative, then you don't need to do in any family member. So this is very important. The genetic testing has no bearing for risk stratification. You cannot use that for provide the treatment. I'm running out of time. I'm not gonna talk about the polarization. In 2011, our group did a study in a symptomatic Brugada patient, and we published in Circulation. And this is the first time that we highlight the subject of the Brugada pattern. We found that in the epicardium, RVOT, there's an abnormal electrogram of fractionated signal, and in the unipolar look like a Brugada syndrome. And when we ablate this area, we normalize the pattern, and and this it looked like what the electrogram. We were so excited about that, and we published that. And when you see this kind of pattern, then you think that it might be underlying fibrosis. And as you can see here, the zigzag pattern, and then you lay the electrode, you can record the abnormal fractionated signal. But at the time when you do pericardium, we didn't know whether or not the patient had fibrosis, because there are many patients who die, and then routine autopsy didn't show anything. And then the MRI, we did MRI in all our patients before we put in the ICD. We never see any abnormality of fibrosis. So why is this patient have this kind of fractionated signal conduction block like that in the heart? Well, we were fortunate that that we have patients that we could take into the OR for our surgeon to help me mapping. And also we collaborate with St. George University in London in the patient who in a family patient in a victim that had a family history of the of Brugada syndrome, and we found the following. This patient was a patient that one of our patients that we did that we could not gain an access into the epicardium to do percutaneous ablation. So we asked our surgeon to open the heart, and then since we know that it's going to be the RVOT, so we do the old-fashioned way mapping in the epicardium. And we come up with the grid over the CT of this patient that to have the area on the RVOT epicardium. And I want you to see that in this area of 8 and 9, you can see the fractionated signal, and that whereas the area 13 was normal, and this area that when we did the biopsy. And you can see here, this is the biopsy, we sent it to St. George, and we stained it with the precocial stain that we stain collagen. What we found is uniformly in all patients, and 2 of them came from Dr. Nogami from Japan, that have the fibrosis like this, very thick in the epicardium, and have some intramural focal replacement fibrosis. Now I want you to know that this patient, on the naked eye and from the surgeon and in the OR, we couldn't see any abnormality. And as I mentioned, in MRI, when this patient was also negative. Even we told the MRI expert to read it, they wouldn't call it. And this is after the surgical ablation, you can see that the pattern normalized very nicely, and the patient did not have any pattern and then recurrent of VL. This is 6 patients that we report. Now we have 9 patients, 5 from Thailand and 1 from University of Tsukuba. That from the University of Tsukuba, he did it with cryo. In Thailand, we did it all with RF. The other thing what we found that was exciting is this is another patient that I want you to look in the area of the side H. The electrogram is normal initially, but when we keep ashmalin, the sodium channel blockade, the signal becomes fractionated. Okay? And then this side that when we did the biopsy again show fibrosis. So what does it mean? Some area you see if the fibrosis is very significant, you already see abnormal electrogram. But some area is very subtle. Only you have to reduce sodium current that when you the abnormal area become manifested. So that's why when you give ashmalin, that's why you highlight the Brugada ECG pattern, and that is the mechanism. And I'm going to quick look. And in the autopsy case, we did the connexin 43 expression. The connexin 43 is in the gap junction. That this is normal. You can see very nice parallel. And then in the Brugada pattern, it's just this area just like this. And so we demonstrated both in vivo and in vitro that there's an increased collagen in the RVOT and in the RV, and also reduced connexin 43 expression, and clearly demonstrated this must be the conduction defect, and then largely caused by the subtle fibrosis in the RV epicardium. Now, I'm gonna have to go right to the ablation because I see that new time coming up. When we published this paper and we show that the only thing we see that in the RVOT epicardium, and when we ablate in that area, we normalize the pattern. And it's only localized in the epicardium, because even in the endocardium, you do in the opposite to the epicardium, you don't see the abnormal signal. Because the epicardium of the RVOT and endocardium of the RVOT came from a different origin. At that time, we said that, well, this area is exclusively in the RVOT. Boy, I was totally wrong. Because when we gain more experience and we use more ashmalin, and then we mapped it with the cardio insight. This is the patient from Vietnam that's sent to Bangkok, and when we mapped the patient with body surface and took the patient to the lab, you can see here that after baseline, the ashmalin accentuated the Brugada pattern. And this is baseline ECGI activation. You don't see any conduction block, anything. But after asthmaline, you can see the conduction block in the related in the alveoli epicardium and also the inferior wall in the inferolateral, closing to tricuspid annulus. And you can see here, this is RAO view. And at the time, I just ablating alveoli epicardium. I didn't do anything on the inferolateral aspect of the RV. We did induce VFib for 10 seconds and we mapped with the body surface, and we can see the rotation here in the alveoli epicardium. This is LAD, and also see focal activity in the inferolateral. And I want to show you the movie here. Again, you can see the rotation here and then focal activity down in the inferior. So I think I did a good job at the time. I sent the patient back to Vietnam, and you can see that the pattern normalized. But because I didn't do, but patient continued to have ventricular fibrillation, multiple shock. So he came back in May. Because the area in the inferolateral I didn't do. And now when we give the asthmaline, we now can see the acceleration in the inferior wall. And this time when we map, we can, and then apply the inferior wall, which we found the abnormal signal. As you can see here, this is the inferior wall that either I missed or it just, I think I missed or just happened at the time. So when now we apply this area, the patient did very well. I can have to skip. So because of this finding, we have expanded now. We have over 100 patients. The Brugada syndrome, especially if the patient has a combined pattern with the early depolarization and the Brugada pattern, the subset is not exclusively only in the anterior alveoli. Although anterior alveoli in all Brugada patients, you have it 100%. But sometimes it also happens in the body of the RV, the inferolateral aspect of the epicardium. And some rare cases that we have now recently in the left LV. So the question then arises, this is the overlapping cardiomyopathy and arrhythmia, ion channelopathy. Is Brugada syndrome is basically something similar to, not the same as the ARVC, or subclinical cardiomyopathic disease, or ion channelopathy, or both. And because we found the fibrosis and we found the conduction defect and we found the more than one area. But we do know that if we apply the pattern, and if the patient have only pure Brugada syndrome, and if we eliminate the pattern after using asthmaline, the patient has no recurrent BF. We are hoping that this would maybe perhaps lead to, in some patients, that we don't have to put ICD in them. And so we concluded in the future, we now have the randomized trial going on between the control group and ablation group in the patient of ICD. And if we came up with the same conclusion like what I'm showing you, that the pure Brugada syndrome without concomitant early depolarization syndrome or conduction defect, after we normalize the pattern, after we remove the substrate, the patient perhaps can be treated without ICD. And thank you for your attention. This is at the Ping River and with the bicycle cross up in the north of Thailand. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Nathan. Any question on the Brugada syndrome? I'll start.